Welcome back, all my fight fans. Today, I'm going to be giving you guys my thoughts on UFC 308. Just happened a couple hours ago. It was in Abu Dhabi, and I'm in North America, so I got to wake up and watch UFC fights. That's kind of cool. Fantastic card all around. I think it's probably the second best card of the entire year, at least for me. It's pretty hard to top 300, but a lot of amazing fights on this card today. So I'm going to go through all of them, give you guys kind of my quick thoughts, and then as I get closer to the main two fights, I'll spend a little bit more and more time on each fight. So I'll put timestamps in the description if you guys want to skip around. If you didn't watch all the fights or you don't care about all of them, you guys can skip around down there. But I want to talk about the first fight of the night first, obviously. It was between Rinat Fakaridinov and Carlos Leal. I'm horrible with names, as you guys know on this channel. I butcher so many names. But this is a fight that a lot of you guys thought was a robbery. I thought it was a robbery as well. I don't like to throw that term around so loosely, but I did think that the wrong guy won. I don't know how the judges had this 30-27. That doesn't make any sense to me. I thought Renat definitely lost at least one round, if not two. And yeah, kind of a bad call there, but it was a fun fight. Moving on, we had Islam Nuradiev versus Bruno Silva. One-sided performance here. Nuradiev just shut out Silva. Silva looked awful in there. Pretty one-sided the whole fight. Nuradiev isn't somebody that I'm super high up on. He is 28, so he's a little bit on the younger side. He's a very fun fighter, but his record's it's a little hit or miss. I know it's fairly good. 7 losses isn't like the most in the world, but a lot of those 7 losses have been quite recent. He's kind of 50-50 in his last like 5-7 fights around there. So yeah, we'll see what he does next, but fantastic performance all around. And then we had Farid Basharat versus Victor Hugo. This fight was a little bit less fun. I think this is probably the most boring fight on the card if I had to point to one, but this was one that I was kind of going to the bathroom during, taking a bathroom break. So but fantastic performance by Farid. He kind of just held Hugo down and dominated him. So moving on, we had Kenny Nchukwu versus Chris Barnett, fan favorite. Everybody loves Chris Barnett. He's a super fun guy, but he threw a kick, and then Kenny kind of caught him and knocked him out. You can't play games with Kenny, or Kennedy, I should say. I don't know why I'm saying Kenny, but Kennedy is a scary fighter, very scary at heavyweight. He has got a tremendous amount of power in his hands. I believe he's from Nigeria. I could be wrong, but those Nigerian fighters, they just have a different level of power. And yeah, he put on a fantastic performance. I'm really excited to see what he does at heavyweight. I want heavyweight to get a little bit shaken up right now. It just seems like Tom's waiting at the top, and we still have the next pay-per-view to go, right? We have Jones and Stipe, and I want that division to get exciting again. So hopefully in 2025, we can see big things from Kennedy, and of course Aspinall and all the other great fighters in the top 5, top 10 there at heavyweight. Then we had Abus Magomedov versus Bruno Ferreira. This was quite a fight. Abus came in looking better than I've ever seen him before in his career. Definitely not the same Abus that I saw against Strickland, and he put on a fantastic performance. I think he was outstriking Bruno for the most part, and Bruno, even though he was landing big shots, he's got a lot of power in his hands. He wasn't quite finding his home with his combinations, and Abus with the reach was just keeping him at bay, and then eventually got to the ground, and he put on an arm triangle very quickly, and he finished it. So 3rd round submission for Abus. Fantastic performance. I hope he stays on this run. I hope he keeps getting better. He has a fantastic skill set, and when he first came into the UFC, I was really excited to see what he would do at middleweight. He hit a couple bumps along the road, but I hope he gets back on the right track, because he is a very fun fighter to watch. And then we had, I think, the fight of the night. I think everybody agrees this was kind of the fight of the night. It's hard to say. There's a lot of great fights, but Mateusz Rebecki versus Orobai was just fantastic fight, start to finish. Both of these guys are super tough. From Poland and Mongolia, like, it doesn't get tougher than that. Both of these guys put their chin on the line, and they ate everything. They ate full meals tonight, or today for me, tonight for them. Fantastic fight. The first round I thought was pretty close. I probably would have given it to perhaps Orblai, maybe maybe the Polish guy. The first round was a little bit up in the air for me. I thought the second round, Orblai came on pretty hard. He started to land his jab more. He started to find his combinations. I believe he mixed in a takedown either in the first or the second that helped him win one of those rounds. And then in the third round, you saw Mateus just pour it on Orblai and almost have him knocked out. Like the commentary team was like, "This fight's over. Ref, you can call it. Like, this fight's done." But Orblai just kept standing up and kept fighting, and he just ate everything. He's like, I know I've made this joke before that he looks like an Easter Island statue, but he took shots like a statue. Like, he was just granite chin, just eating everything. And a fantastic fight. I can't wait to rewatch that one. That was blood and guts, and everything that you want out of a fight was in that fight. You know, both fighters at the end just dog-tired, hugging each other after the fight, just total respect for each other. The canvas was covered in blood at the end of it. Fantastic. That was definitely my favorite fight of the night. So shout out to both of those guys. Then we had, well, you know what? This next fight might be the worst fight of the night because it ended in a knee injury in the first round. Jeff Neal and RDA. You don't like to see fights end that way. I think Jeff Neal was winning that first round, but it's hard to say that he was just going to pitch a shutout the whole fight. You know, it's RDA. He can submit you. He can knock you out at any point in the fight. It sucks to see RDA lose like that. I hate when veterans get into these late 30 years and then they get leg injuries inside of the cage, whether it's, you know, Silva, Weidman, all these, McGregor. It's just sad to see. So I hope he can bounce back. I hope he can get another fight. I don't think he's going to go on a win streak and make another run at the title, but I'd like to see RDA back in there and go out on a win and put his gloves on in the octagon after a win. So yeah, hopefully you bounce back quick, RDA. That sucks to see. Then we had Ibo Aslan versus Rafael Cerqueira. Sorry for butchering that name, but I'm not butchering that as bad as the guy got butchered himself in the first round. 51 seconds, I believe, is all it took for Ibo Aslan to just... that guy's scary. He's been finished once in his career. He has one loss. He was submitted once earlier. It's like, I think, his 7th fight or something. And then ever since then, all of his other fights, I think it's like 14 wins. All 14 of them have been by finish. This guy is scary. He's got scary power in his hands. He's going to be a problem at this division. I think it's middleweight or light heavyweight. I forget now, but fantastic performance by him. The way he just melted that guy, put the punches on him, kept punching. It was like a 20-piece combination to end the fight. Fantastic performance. That guy is very terrifying. I can't wait to see what he does next at his weight class. You guys can remind me if it's 185 or 205, but fantastic performance. And then we got a kickboxing masterclass in the next fight. And I said going into this that this fight was kind of 50-50 between Shairo Magomedov and Armen Petrosyan. Petrosian's no joke, man. He's a great kickboxer, and I think he might have won the first round. It's hard to say. I probably would have scored it for Shara, but it was a very close first round. Second round, it was close until that knockout. That knockout was phenomenal. It came out of nowhere, and the fact that he walked off after it was crazy. He didn't even follow it up with any shots. It was a double spinning back fist knockout, and I've seen this thrown in the gym before, but I've never, ever seen this thrown in an MMA fight. I think I might have seen it in Muay Thai once or twice, but it's a high level technique. Basically what you do is throw one spinning back fist and then you roll off of the other one to hit him from the other side with your other spinning back fist. And that led to a knockout that was one of my favorite knockouts of the year, if not my absolute favorite, because it's such a rare technique. And Shara, man, there's times in the fight, even when he's kickboxing, where you're like, man, is he going to get it done? Like, is he losing rounds here? Is he fading? And then he'll find something out of nowhere, and he'll just knock you out, and then you'll walk off as if that's what he meant to do the whole time, as if the whole time he had planned to do that. And it's fantastic to watch him fight. I just hope they don't pair him up with any wrestlers, because that's his biggest weakness. He will get mauled if he's in there with like a Chimaev or a Bo Nickel type. Like, he's going to get thrown around, but to watch him kickbox is so much fun. He wants another fight before the end of the year. I think that would be 5 fights in 1 year. I think the last person to do that might have been Angela Hill. Fantastic if he does that. I love active fighters, especially kickboxers like that who make for really fun fights. So shout out to Shara. I love watching him fight. I hope he keeps rising in the rankings, and hopefully he can get to Dagestan and train with those mountain men and get his wrestling right, because he's going to need that if he's going to make a run at the title. Then next up we had Lerone Murphy versus Dan Ige. man, some people were saying that this fight was a robbery at the end of it. You cannot throw that term around that loosely. Okay, you just expose yourself as a, I hate using this term, but casual fan when you do that. You don't know what you're watching if you just throw out robbery after every time the guy who you were cheering for loses. That's not fair. This was a very, very close fight. I had it basically 2 rounds to 1. I did have it for Murphy, but I could have easily seen it going 2 rounds to 1 for Ige. But unless it's like a 3-round shutout, you can't call it a robbery. It was a very, very close fight. Both guys were throwing huge punches at each other the whole time. They were just getting out of the way of huge shots. So it was a very entertaining fight. It was probably in the top 2, top 3 fights of the night. Honestly, it was a very, very exciting fight. So I hope to see Murphy kind of improve his ground game a little bit. If you get taken down by Dan Ige, I know Dan Ige is a good wrestler, but there's better wrestlers at this weight class, and I hope Murphy has that ground game under wraps if he's going to break into the top 5, top 10. So we'll see what's next from him. Then we had Magomed Ankalaev versus Alexander Rakic. Again, I think that this fight was just clearly Ankalaev won. I had him winning all 3 rounds, but I could have seen Rakic winning the first round. I think the second and third, Ankalaev was just finding the bigger shots, even though on the scorecards, or not the scorecards, but the stat sheets, Rakic was landing more significant strikes and more total strikes, I believe, throughout the course of the whole fight. But Ankalaev, when he lands, he's got a tremendous amount of power, and it was a lot cleaner, and the shots were affecting Rakic more than Rakic's shots were affecting Ankalaev. Ankalaev has tremendous boxing, great speed, a really high boxing IQ, and he's got power. And he's very good at countering, and he pressures people. He cuts the cage off. There's very few people who back Ankalaev up, and that's also the case for Pereira. So breaking down the X's and O's of Ankalaev versus Pereira, I'm going to save that for when that fight's announced and I do a breakdown for that card. I could talk about that fight all day. I've been wanting it for years. Well, 2 years for sure, but yeah, I'm super, super excited to see that fight next. I think Ankalaev definitely needs the next shot. However, if Jones and Stipe both retire, I've said this before, if they both retire next month, I think they should do Pereira versus Tom Aspinall for the vacant belt. I think if you're going to do a fight for a vacant belt and you want to give Tom a big payday because he's not getting Stipe or Jones, give him Pereira. Make the biggest fight in heavyweight history. If not, it's already Jones and Stipe. I think Pereira and Tom might be even bigger. Legacy-wise, obviously, Jones and Stipe is a bigger fight, but, you know, Pereira and Tom, I know Pereira's like 38 now, but they're kind of in their primes right now, so that fight would be excellent to see. But I really want to see Ankalaev fight for the belt next. I think he has all the skills to get it done. He defended a takedown brilliantly in this fight. I don't think anybody's really going to take him down at this weight class, and if you stand on the feet with him, I think the only person that's going to be able to stop Ankalaev is Pereira, so I really want to see that one play out. I'll stop there for now because, like I said, I could talk about that matchup forever. We'll get more into that when the fight's announced. I'm sure that's the next fight at light heavyweight for the title. So next up, we had Chimaev versus Robert Whittaker, and I put a quick video out of my initial reactions to this fight after it happened, and yeah, Chimaev is the scariest fighter in the UFC, I think. I think there's not, with Khabib retired, I think there's not one person that would be more terrified to be locked in a cage with than Chimaev. And other people might have different opinions. They might be like, well, it would suck to be in there with Ngannou or Tom Aspinall, for that matter, if we're talking about UFC fighters, because they hit you so hard, they might take your head literally off your body. But for me, getting mauled like that and getting emasculated almost in a way, just to be held down under another man, to me, that's way worse. And the way Chimaev did that to Robert Whittaker, I have to assume that Robert Whittaker is like, holy, oh, I thought I was tough, but man, that's a different animal. That's a different level of beast, man. What he did to Robert Whittaker was flawless. He didn't take a single punch. This is the Chimaev that we saw when he first came into the UFC, when he had like 3 fights in like 2 or 3 months. 2 fights in 10 weeks, or not 10 weeks, 10 days. 10 days and he had 2 fights. Chimaev, man, when he first came into the UFC, we're seeing that again. We're seeing that aura again. There's a couple years there, 2-3 years, where he was dealing with health issues, pulling out of fights. It sucked to see. It seems like some of that might have been his own health issues. Some of it might have been his son's health issues, who's currently having surgery. Prayers out to him. I hope he pulls through. But fantastic performance by Chimaev. If he keeps doing this to people, like, nobody's stopping him. Nobody stopping him. Usman might have had a lucky night. Maybe Chimaev had a bad night. Maybe Usman is that good of a wrestler, but unless you're a high-level wrestler, you're not going to be able to stop this dude. He's doing that to everybody. I mean, Robert Whittaker defended perfectly. He defended transitions. He defended submission attempts. He was defending perfectly, but Chimaev, the Boars, man, he keeps going. He keeps going. And he's so violent with how he pulls your limbs, with how he hits you. Even on the ground, like the short punches are very hard. And then you saw how he threw the choke on. I mean, the choke was on for like 1 second, and it wasn't even a choke. It was a crank. I think he cracked Robert Whittaker's jaw or chin with that. He might have broken his jaw just by throwing the choke over his face. Terrifying, terrifying. To do that to Robert Whittaker, a man who went to war with Yoel Romero for 10 rounds and was able to stop Yoel Romero, a guy who fought, for the gold in the Olympics. Chimaev is so damn scary. I think there's one guy, and my hopes, every time I watch a Chimaev fight, my hopes for this goes a little bit lower, but my only hope is for Bo Nickel. Because, out of all the wrestlers on the roster, I think Bo Nickel's the best, and I think Chimaev's probably second best. It's hard to say because you'd have to see these guys grapple, and then there's the different weight classes, but I think once those two get locked into the cage with each other, we're going to see who the best wrestler in the UFC is, and probably the best wrestler in UFC history. I know there's Henry and DC and Khabib to a degree, even though he doesn't have the same pedigree as Henry, but that would be the highest level wrestling match we would ever see in the history of the UFC. And on one hand, Chimaev's more violent, he's more dominant, he's more vicious, he's more aggressive with his wrestling, but on the other hand, if you know wrestling, and I've been following Bo for years before he even announced his MMA debut, let alone UFC debut. I've been following him for years, and he is a more technical wrestler. He was closer to making an Olympic team than Chimaev was. And I think on a technical level, Bo has the skills to beat Chimaev. I think he's strong enough, too. I think Bo's a lot stronger than he looks. He kind of looks, middle shape, almost average. He's still got some muscle on him, but he's certainly not built like Kyle Dake or Jordan Burroughs or some of the other great wrestlers on the American team, right? But man, that's my dream fight. I want it to be for the title. I think Sean Strickland and Dricus is kind of a gimmick fight now after what we just saw happen to Robert Whittaker. Like, I don't care. I don't care what happens in the Sean Dricus fight. I think both of them get slaughtered by Chimaev. Whittaker or Sean Strickland probably in less than a round. I don't think Strickland's going to be able to handle Chimaev at all. I think Dricus might be able to push it to like a second or third round stoppage, but only because he's like a weird type of toughness. Dricus is weird. He's the most odd fighter I've ever seen in my life. So maybe he could pull out a win. I don't know, but I think Chimaev runs through both of those guys. I think Chimaev could easily be a 3-weight class champion. I don't know if he can make the cut back down to 170, but he could obviously demolish, in my opinion, I think it's obvious. I think he could demolish Alex Pereira if he did that same thing that he did to Holland and Whittaker to Pereira and just take him down and strangle him. Yeah, I don't think Pereira is going to be able to defend that type of wrestling for 5 minutes. I don't think it's going to happen, just in my opinion. And then, I don't think Chimaev could go to heavyweight. Certainly there's been guys at his height at heavyweight, but I don't know if he's quite big enough. From what DC says, he has the strength to do it. Apparently he gives DC a couple tugs where he's like, damn, this guy's like heavyweight strong, but I don't know. I don't know what's next with Chimaev. I think you give him whatever he wants. Just feed him the top guys. Feed him all the champions, because nobody who's not a champion right now wants to fight that guy. There's not one person at 170, 185, or 205 who wants to take a fight with Chimaev and lose their spot in the rankings, because I think they know that guy's going to do that to everybody. Unless you're a high-level wrestler, you're screwed. Man, was that a terrifying fight. I'm going to move on to the next one because I talked about that for quite a while there. So, Ilia Topuria, Max Holloway, fantastic fight. This lived up to the hype, man. I knew going into this fight that Ilia was going to win. I shouldn't say I know, because you never know until it happens, but I had a very, very strong feeling that this was Max's kryptonite. Max was going to get knocked out. Now, I was believing Ilia. I'm like, he's going to point to the ground, and Max might oblige that. And if Max does, it might be the quickest KO in UFC history. Now, Ilia did point to the ground. He stood at the center. Max did a little waving of the Matador towel, and Yeah, he didn't oblige in that, which is good because it made him, it gave him an extra like 10, 15 minutes to stay alive until he got decimated. The first two rounds were close. Max Holloway was landing some really nice jabs. He was finding his range. He was keeping Ilya at bay more than anybody else has for the most part. And he was landing these knee stomps, which I said it again in my reaction video to this fight. If you're a Max Holloway fan and you go online and you berate John Jones or John Jones fans for him cheating with the knee stomps, well, you can't be a hypocrite. You gotta either berate Max Holloway or admit that that's a clean tactic. I think it's a clean tactic. I think if you stomp somebody's knee out, that's part of the game. I love when John Jones does it. I love when Khalil Roundtree does it. When Max Holloway does it. Do it. Stomp people's knees out. I want to see that personally. That might be a little bit vicious, but I think that was a great counter to what Ilya was doing with those chopping leg kicks. He throws them like Jose Aldo, the way he turns his leg over and just chops down. Fantastic leg kicks, some of the deadliest leg kicks I've ever seen at that weight class. And I think if he keeps that up, he's gonna give a lot of people troubles. And people were saying, like, as this fight goes on, it benefits Max Holloway. And I'm like, I don't know, because, Ilya kicked Volk's leg like twice and Volk almost fell over. And he was kicking Max Holloway's leg, and that was slowing him down a little bit. You saw it in the third round. Max was slowing down his movement a little bit, and that's when he caught Holloway, is when he started to slow down a bit. So those leg kicks are absolutely deadly. I'm happy that Max was countering with the knee stomps. That's how you should counter those leg kicks, because you can't always just go tit for tat, especially if the other guy's faster at throwing a traditional leg kick. What you might want to do is throw that side kick or the oblique kick to the knee. And I think it's good. I think more people should use it. I think it should be used kind of like a jab, like a leg jab. So instead of side kicking always to the body, because that can get caught a little bit easier, side kick right down to the leg and keep the jab floating. And you'll keep guys at bay like that pretty easily. So I think it's a technique that should be used more, in fact, instead of being banned or whatever. I know Rampage Jackson wants to see it banned. What a baby. But anyways, what else do I want to point out? Ilya's shoulder movement, that was a big thing too. The fact that he's so short, he's only 5'7", but he's talking about going up to 155 and potentially fighting Islam, who's, I think, the same height as Holloway, but a lot more filled out. I think he could potentially do it. I would still bet on Islam, obviously. I don't think I would ever bet against Islam, but unless it was Usman, unless it was Nurmagomedov from Bellator, but I don't think they're going to fight each other. I think they're going to wait for Islam to move up, then Usman will come in and he'll be the new 155 king. I think he's the most complete fighter I've ever seen. But besides that, it's probably Ilya, because Ilya, the way he moves those shoulders to get into the pocket and to create angles for himself and to shield himself, he has a beautiful Philly shell. You want to know how to use a Philly shell? Watch Ilya Topuria. Do not watch Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland has a lazy Philly shell. It works sometimes, but if he used that against an actual boxer, he would get his head taken off so quickly. That Philly shell sucks. And if you watch boxing, you know what I'm talking about. But the way Ilya uses it is beautiful. He actually uses the Philly shell right. He uses it to work his way inside the pocket, to work his way outside of the pocket, to set up counter punches. It's beautiful. I could break down Ilya's technique all day. I did a little bit in my if Ilya could be, or why I think Ilya could become the GOAT video. I'll link that at the end of this video. It's about half an hour long, and it's looking better and better. The more these fights go on, it's looking like he might be able to do that. Having Volk and Holloway, two former champions, two former top pound-for-pound guys, two future Hall of Famers, and you KO both of them back-to-back. If he stays active, man, he might be able to do it. He might be able to become the next GOAT because, like I said, his boxing, elite, probably the best in the entire sport right now. His leg kicks, like I just said, extremely powerful, and they're going to give everybody problems. His wrestling, probably the best in the division. I wouldn't say the best in the sport, especially when we just saw what Chimaev did. I don't know if Ilya could do that to Max, but fantastic wrestling, definitely the best in the division. Maybe Iluev's there. We'll see that in the future. And then the jiu-jitsu, I don't know anybody else at 145 who has that level of jiu-jitsu. Now, you might be able to say, well, maybe Mitchell. He already beat Mitchell and submitted him. Well, maybe Lopez. We'll see. I think with how Ilya started his career with 7 submissions, 7 of those, I think 6 of them were in the first round, 5 different submissions. I mean, he was just strangling people like they were nothing in his first 7 fights. He's like, come on, like, give me an opponent. And then he started to show off his boxing. Like, the guy is so damn well rounded. Again, I'm kind of repeating myself here. I said this in my reaction video, but I think he's like as complete as like GSP. Like, I look at him the same as GSP. GSP has a couple things going for him, like his Superman punch is quite spectacular, but then Ilya has the Philly shell. The kicks, I would side with GSP. The wrestling and the jiu-jitsu, I think, is even. I might even give an edge to Ilya, but I don't know because GSP's jiu-jitsu is fantastic. It's really high level, and he trains with guys like John Danaher, and it's hard to say. It's very, very hard to compare those guys. But I think I see them similar as like guys who have jiu-jitsu, wrestling, boxing, kicking, all elite. And that's very, very hard to do. And I think just above those guys are guys like John Jones and Demetrius Johnson. I put those two guys at the top because they have everything that Ilya and GSP has, but they also add a level of creativity and artistry to their fighting that I've never seen from anybody else. You talk about the Ray Borg submission, that's just one thing. You talk about the Marias KO, that's another crazy. I think that's actually more impressive than the Ray Borg submission. The way he came back and KO'd Marias with that flying knee, the way he timed it and he covered distance to hit it against the cage. Demetrius Johnson does things that I'm like, that's art, that's beauty, that makes somebody the GOAT. And John Jones, the same thing with the spinning back elbows and the tricky kicks, the axe kicks, and he's got, question mark kicks, he's got spinning back kicks. He kind of almost invented that oblique kick to the knee. At least he was the first fighter that I saw throw it. And there's a level of artistry to their game that's just a little bit different. But I think Ilya can actually evolve to that. He's only 27. He's still learning. Like, if he starts throwing spinning kicks or if he starts doing stuff like Shara did with the double spinning back fist, like, I think he could start adding stuff like that to his game. Now, he's obviously a very calculated fighter. He's a little bit less loose than somebody like John Jones, who seems to just flow with everything he does. Ilya seems very calculated, like he's a supercomputer that just doesn't make any mistakes. But we'll see. We'll see how he evolves. I'm really, really excited to see how his career plays out. I'm a huge, huge fan of Ilya Topuria. Yeah, the Lopez fight I think probably should be next. If he beats Volk, obviously that we need to see that play out first. I think Volk's probably going to win that fight. Actually, it's hard to call. Volk's like 35, 36, so it's hard to call. But whatever's in store for Ilya next, I'm excited to watch it. Whether he goes up in weight, down in weight, stays at 145. I want to see his career play out. He's excellent. I think he's really humble. I think his confidence gets mistaken for cockiness, but he doesn't rub me as somebody who's cocky. It might be the Spanish flair that he has, but I truly believe that he's confident. He has the same aura to me as when McGregor came in. Now, he's not as loudmouth. He's not as funny. He's not as fluid with his words, but English isn't his first language. He speaks like 3 or 4 different languages, Ilya. I think he's going to evolve into a star. I think he's truly got that thing in him, that confidence to make him become the GOAT. It's an X factor that you don't see with everybody. I saw it with Islam. I saw it with Habib. I saw it with John Jones, although I kind of became a fan of John Jones right before he became champion. And I've seen it with a couple guys, but it's a very, very rare thing to see in people, this level of confidence that I'm going to beat anybody. Like, I think Ilya believes in his heart that he could beat John Jones. And you need that level of confidence to win fights and to engage in fights in the way that Ilya does. That confidence translates to his striking. And, yeah, what a performance. What a performance. I love Max Holloway, man. I've been a fan of him since I was like 13, 14 years old. I love him outside of the cage, on the mic. I think he's fantastic. He's really fun. Funny guy. Humble. Always has nice things to say about other people. I love Max Holloway. I've never seen anybody do that to him. That was special, man. That was special. It's exactly how I saw the fights going. I thought it was going to be a first-round knockout for Ilya and a first-round submission for Chimaev. Max made it a little bit of a longer fight, which I should have expected from somebody like Max Holloway. That's bad. My bad. But that's exactly how I saw those fights going. And I'm not saying like, oh, I'm some sort of mystic who calls fights right all the time. I call fights wrong all the time. Not all the time. I tend to get most right, but that's because I've been watching so intensely for so long. But it doesn't mean anything. You never know how a fight's going to turn out until the fight happens. That's why when people judge cards before they happen, I'm like, Wait until the UFC card actually plays out and we see all the fights. Then you can judge the card, because you never know what's going to happen until it happens. And yeah, wow. I don't have anything else to say, really. I'm so happy to have a great night of fights like that. That was second best card all year for me. So yeah, let me know your guys' thoughts on all the fights down in the comments. Who do you guys want to see Max Holloway, Ilya Topuria matched up with next? Do you want to see Chimaev fight for the belt next? What do you guys want to see next for Whitaker? Ankalaev, does he get the next shot at light heavyweight, or does Alex Pereira fight Tom Aspinall? What do you guys think? You guys let me know down in the comments. I love hearing from you guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share with your friends if you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, it means the world to me. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.